So my name's Natalie Davison, and I wrote 3 talks for today. The first talk I wrote 3 weeks ago, and I was super pumped about. We told everybody about it. Marcel did a Facebook Live about it. And then Monday, I threw it out and wrote a new talk because I was afraid to be too vulnerable. So my second talk was extremely safe and super flippin' boring. So on Tuesday, I threw that talk out and wrote the talk that you're going to hear today, which I believe is the perfect mixture of vulnerability to keep it real and safety so that my kids don't end up in therapy because I was asked to be at my master mindset. Why did I write 3 talks? Well, nobody that knows me really well, and some of my very best friends are in the room today, would be surprised that I wrote 3 talks. I suffer from perfectionism. Now, when my perfectionism comes from love, then it's like the best thing about me. But when my perfectionism comes from fear, like it did on Monday and Tuesday, then it's all-consuming. I have a long history of being a perfectionist. So let me take you back to my very first memory of this, 1985. Lakeville United Church, when you're heading out Shediac Road, it's on the right, tiny little church. And Natalie Chapman at the time was asked to be in the Christmas play. Yes. I'd been waiting for this moment forever. I had a bit of a duet situation. I was 5. My partner, Sean, was only 4. I went home. I was pumped. I learned my lines. I practiced. I rehearsed. I was good to go. Perfectionism in full force. I planned my outfit, the whitest tights possible, the most amazing plaid dress, and my mushroom cut was perfectly coiffed. About a week before opening night, we had rehearsal. And 4-year-old Sean couldn't remember his lines. Now, you may feel compassion for Sean, but 5-year-old Natalie certainly did not. And I marched my way to the director of the church production, who was a sweet little old lady volunteering in the tiniest little church, and demanded that we do something about this situation, which of course she dismissed. The only person who would hear my concern was my mother, who humored me on the way home in the car, but again, obviously Sean was 4. Everybody had a handle on that but me. So finally it was opening night, mushroom cut in check. I marched my way up on that stage, Sean by my side, and it's my moment. When baby Jesus was born, the 3 wise men came and said, when baby Jesus was born, the 3 wise men came and said, nothing. The tower that I had built upon my perfectionist foundation began to crumble all around me. I panicked. I looked around a room much smaller than this one today, and I did what any reasonable 5-year-old who wanted to disappear would do. I reached down, grabbed my dress, and pulled it over my head. The church burst into laughter. My grandfather snapped my least favorite family photo of all time, and I remain the butt of all family jokes to this day. So perfectionism's been something I've been dealing with for a while. About 2 years ago, I wasn't in the most positive situation in my life. Look at that. See, that was us, the Davison family. And we were just, to put it easily, out of control. So I was working way too much for somebody else. I cared a lot about my work, and I cared a lot about my team, but the amount of heart and energy and effort I was putting into it didn't make sense and didn't align with my values because I wasn't spending time with my kids. My husband and I were more like coworkers and roommates than, a couple. And my entire value system was just completely out of whack. And let me tell you guys one thing. Whenever you're feeling misery in your life, I firmly believe it's because you are not living in alignment with your values. So to say that 2 years ago, the Davisons were not living in alignment with our values would be a massive understatement. Now I know that we had a ton of signs that we could have read, and the biggest of which was one of my son's anxiety issues. And so our life was completely centered around this anxiety, and we weren't able to reconcile the fact that we had a big part to play in that, because it's very hard to own that kind of thing. And as a society, we just want to put labels on it and get fast solutions. It's very hard to do the work to move through that kind of thing. So, you ever get on a ride? I don't actually even like rides. I don't know why I get on them. But you ever get on a ride and you're on it and you're like, oh, I shouldn't get on this one. And it just keeps going and you just want it to end. But it keeps going and going. So I was on that ride and I was silently screaming for someone to stop the ride, and they wouldn't until they did. So all of a sudden, here I was. I wasn't working. My husband took a job in Toronto and moved. We're still happily married, by the way. But he still lives there. And my kids were out of school for the summer. I didn't work again for a year. And I call that Nat leave. So I took an entire year off. The first week, I was a wreck. So I sent the kids to daycare anyway. And I got up in the morning and thought, what is my place in this world? Where's my identity? Who am I if I'm not that person I was last week? And so I promptly took my place on the couch and binge-watched all of Pretty Little Liars within a week. The next week, I got up and realized that this might be my only opportunity in my kids' entire life to take the summer off with them. So Nat leave wasn't the plan, but the summer now was the plan. And let me tell you, as a seasoned perfectionist, I planned the best damn family summer that ever there was. We did it all. We traveled, we visited amusement parks, we swam, we went to Ontario, we went to Quebec. I mean, we even ate at medieval times. We did it all. We had the best summer ever. And at the end of that summer, I was so high on life and connection that it became painfully obvious how disconnected I had been. So this experience had really, really brought me into the present moment with my kids and realized, whoa, that wasn't me. This is me. So what am I going to do to make sure I don't go back to that place ever again? So in September, when the kids went back to school, I got to work, and I made the most of my Nat leave. For the next 10 months, I completely, obsessively devoted myself to researching and learning everything I could on the topic of personal development, happiness, growth, anything that I could consume related to positive psychology, I ate it up. And then I would go pick my kids up at the end of the day and try everything out on them. They would tell you it's a long, long year. My best friends in the front row, who I also kept trying things out on, will also tell you it was a very long year. But what came from that is I had a few realizations, and one of the biggest is when I look at how disconnected I was, the other thing is that I was very reactive. So when you're living like this, when you're on the roller coaster and something goes wrong, you show up big. When somebody screws up because it wasn't your fault, you show up big in a negative way. And I realized how often I had been lashing out at people and how reactive I had been. And I look at my son's problem with anxiety, and I'm like, well, yeah, this is kind of obvious now, isn't it? So I was able to create a framework that I now use to navigate challenge and change, and it has fundamentally changed my life. When I say that my son's not struggling with anxiety anymore, I'm not exaggerating. We changed schools this year, and his teacher last night, a parent-teacher, told me what a wonderful boy he is and what a kind person. And those are words I didn't know that I would ever hear from a teacher. So he's using these principles, I'm using these principles, my other son, my husband, and we're feeling really flippin' happy about life. So you guys want to know what it is? Thank you. Number one, so this is based on my three fundamental lessons or rules. Number one is that we tell ourselves stories, and we all tell ourselves stories. What is the story that will make everything okay? So Monday night, when I threw out the first story, the one where I was going to talk about my son's anxiety in detail, and I was going to open with how I was like in a ball on the floor crying 2 years ago, and then now my son is this glowing star. You know, when I was going to tell that story, why did I not? Because the story I told myself was that that's too much. These people are going to judge you. They're going to think you're a bad mother. And I wasn't ready for that yet. So then I wrote a really safe story. I ended up where I am today with this talk, But I still have stories, like, what if I do that weird thing where I walk frontwards and backwards the whole time? Is my shirt see-through? Do I look fat? I mean, are these people gonna like me? They're all here to see Dan. Like, why, what? Those are the stories I told myself about today. The story that made everything okay was that my friends are gonna still love me at the end of this no matter what, and that's the story that I've been living with since Wednesday. I want to tell you another example of the stories that we tell ourselves. And very early into my Nat leave, the story is about two of my friends. I'll call them Dick and Jane to protect the innocent. So Dick invited me out for coffee, and he said, "I really need to talk to you. Make sure you're all right." I was like, "All right, I'm all right. Why wouldn't I be all right?" And he's like, "Well, it's just that I was talking to Jane, and Jane said that you're not all right. She said you had a breakdown." I immediately went to a place of fear. I had a breakdown? My friends are talking about me behind my back. They're saying negative things. I never liked them anyway. Screw them. I didn't speak to either of those people for 8 months, two of my best friends, because I was coming from a place of fear. So now I know that I should not have stopped there. I should have stepped back and asked, "What do you mean? Why would she say I had a breakdown? What was her concern?" And then I should have called Jane and said, "You know what? I had this conversation I'm not feeling so good about. What's up?" But my ego was so attached to that story that I needed to live it to fulfill myself, to feel better about the fact that I didn't need to deal with these people who made me look at my vulnerabilities. How often are the stories you're telling about what happened to you holding you back? You can build number 2 right on top of number 1. This is like the game changer for us. When you energize negativity, it multiplies, so does positivity. So I learned this lesson when I did a course at the beginning of Nat Leave called The Nurtured Heart Approach. It hasn't gotten enough press, in my opinion, but it's about, the whole premise is how to deal with kids who have ADHD, ODD, autism, various labels that are showing up big in negativity, kids who are intense. I guess he calls it energetically intense. And so the whole premise of this is based on the fact that as humans, we're neurobiologically wired. I say that really slow and wrong every time. As humans, we're neurobiologically wired to seek connection. And if you don't believe me, think about the fact that you're only alive because upon birth you connected so deeply with another person that they chose to feed you, keep you warm, clothe you, and so on. The only reason we're here is because of human connection. So, we all show up big in negativity, and I don't care who says they don't, we do. And it's about managing that and trying to flip that on its head. Imagine, if you will, you walk into your living room and your niece is drawing a beautiful picture in her coloring book with her marker, and you say, you're really pumped. You're like, wow, she's a really good artist. So maybe the best energetic connection she's going to get from you in that very positive moment is going to be like, wow, Sally, you're really good at that. But now imagine Sally took that same marker and drew on your wall. How are you showing up now? She has got you. She has got the energy of relationship, the presence, the connection. You're really there. Nothing can distract you in that moment. You're energetically connected. And so, what I learned in the Nurtured Heart Approach, what I believe transformed most of my son's challenges, and what I now use as a super mind trick on adults, is you don't energize negativity at all. You stay flat, but you bring it with the positivity. When she's drawing there, especially if it's somebody that you have a history of negativity with, when they're doing the right thing, you show up big. You show up present in the positive. Little story about that. I have a lot of insecurity around meeting customers' expectations, and what I mean by that is I am I will tell you that I will never let you down as a customer, and I will literally kill anybody who gets in the way of me letting you down as a customer. My integrity is very important to me, but in the past, I didn't care who stood in my way. That's changed quite a bit. Previously, I have a lot of vendor relationships, and I can think of at least 6 incidences where vendors maybe missed a deadline, not that big of a deal to them. But to me, I was now going to be late to my customer. I can think of examples, countless examples of being rude, short, firing people. I mean, I was just ready to go. If you made me late to my customer, that was it. That was my trigger. There was nothing that made me show up bigger in negativity. So about a month ago, I had a vendor miss a deadline, and I looked brutal to my client. But this vendor had never missed a deadline before. So we had about 12 interactions that were super, super positive. So I stopped, first of all, lesson 1, I stopped. I said, no stories. Don't tell yourself a story about this. Positive story. What's the best story? Okay, maybe something went wrong. And then I chose not to energize the negativity the way I used to. And so I called up my vendor and I said, you're always so awesome at being on time. I love working with you. What's up? They told me a story that justified the one absence, or the one lateness rather. And in face of the other 12 positive experiences, it wasn't that big of a deal, and I was willing to move forward with this person. Now, where the real value and equity comes in the relationship part of this, is that had I blown up at them, how willing would they be to engage with me in a positive way moving forward? But instead, I was safe for them. I was a soft place to land, and so all they want to do now is make it up to me. Don't energize negativity. And my third and final, how am I for time? Where's my time person? Jane, good? Okay. I tend to talk way too much. So number 3, my favorite. The less you fight fear, the less it fights you. So by Wednesday, I was too tired and done fighting my fear about this. And so I let it go. And guess what? I didn't have another moment of anxiety until now. I stopped fighting my fear. This is my favorite story that I'll tell you today. I'm a huge holiday fanatic. Only second to Christmas for me is Halloween. So I've been patiently waiting for the last 8 years to be able to really up our Halloween game with the kids without, giving them some trauma. Thank you, whoever laughed. Thank you. Keep that up. So 8 years later, and finally this year I thought, let's try bringing them to the haunted house in Dorchester, the Keller House. Okay? Who's been there? Okay. So you guys got to see this. It's like unreal. There's a bunch of senior citizens in the community that get dressed up and volunteer, and they jump in your face and scream. It's super awesome. Definitely a place you should take an 8-year-old with severe anxiety. So, no, I'm not that bad. I convinced my mom to come with me, so we had backup. So I got my mom, the kids. Perfect stormy night. We drive out, it's pouring rain, it's really dark, it's super scary. We drive past the penitentiary, and my kids are like, well, they're already scared from that, asking me if a prisoner can jump into our car, so they're fully traumatized already before we get there. And then we get in line, and it's a big line. That messes with you maybe more than the actual haunted house, standing in that line for half an hour. So we get in line, and I can tell that they've noticed that there are no other children in line. Mom, why are there no other kids here? I don't know. It's cool. They're inside already. So I can feel the anxiety. The grip on my hand is getting a little tighter, a little more nervous, and they can hear screams inside. And I'm like, no, that's just a CD. And I really want to go, right? I don't want to ruin my experience. So I get inside, and George, who had struggled with his anxiety and come through kind of this other end, I said, Mom, I'll take George, because we're used to George being the one that's a little more nervous. I'm totally outing him the way I didn't plan to. So Mom held hands with my other son, who I won't name. We're walking through the house, and we walk in the first room, and a full-grown adult in bloody costume jumps in his face and screams. And so I immediately do the right thing, and I laugh really, really loud to show him how much fun we're having, right? So then another one, and I keep doing it, and so we're traveling through this very traumatic experience as his mother scream, laugh, super fake in the corner. I can just hear it now. We get about halfway through the house, And I look down, I'm like, man, he's not crying. I'm so proud of this kid. I can't believe what he's accomplished. This is amazing. And I remember I have another kid, and I look back, and his shirt is soaked in tears. Right, I know. And I look, and I see my mother's face, and she's like, what is wrong with you? So we're standing halfway through Keller House, and I'm like, George, don't look at your brother, don't look at your brother. They're identical twins, and when they say, like, identical twins do freaky stuff, they do freaky stuff. So there's no way George was going to survive if he saw Jack crying. And as he started to turn around, I knew it was coming. Bah! So I've got two kids scream crying in the middle of Keller House. My mom looking at me like, you're the worst mother ever. I can't believe I raised you. And I'm trying to figure out how long it will take us to get through the rest of the tour so I don't have to miss it. I didn't want to get disowned, so we actually went out the back door, and we were able to leave. So we get in the car, and nobody says anything. There's just some quiet sobs in the back seat, and my mom's silent and pissed. And I'm telling myself the stories, right? Like, oh, God, you're a bad mom. Why'd you do that? You know, Halloween's not that important. Yes, it is. I'm going through my dialogue, and then finally Jack breaks the silence. Oh, that's the other kid. I said his name. Whatever. They live with me. They're going to have therapy anyway. So Jack breaks the silence and says, I can't believe you brought us there. I will never go there again. That was a really irresponsible decision. And I'm like, how do I answer this one? And then George speaks up and answers for me. And he says, Jack, you don't understand. The reason we were crying in there is because we're not used to using that kind of fear. All we need to do is practice. We're not used to using that kind of fear. There's Natalie summed up in like 2 seconds out of an 8-year-old's mouth. And I was like, so what do you mean by that? And he goes, oh, and spends the next 45 minutes elaborating on the specific details in the ways in which we will continue to scare each other at home for fun. So right away, they upped the scary quotient of their Halloween costumes. They went from being Ninja Turtles to the Headless Horseman, lots of blood and guts, which was super awesome. Then they started like jumping out at me all the time. So I got up one morning at 6 o'clock. I thought they were asleep. I was going to the bathroom, and I got like, ah! So that was really great. We do that a lot now. And we started going to inappropriately scary movies. So I took them to Miss Peregrine's Home for Innocent Children, and they practiced their fear. Hear me out. No nightmares, right? No nightmares, no anxiety, no tears. Because we're practicing our fear, and we're laughing in the flippant face of it. We're laughing at our fear. And so what George said in that moment, I can't stop it, saying their names. What George said when he said we're not used to using that type of fear, he used lesson 1. He wasn't telling himself any stories about how his mom's like crazy and putting him through hell. He let that go. He told himself a positive story. Number 2, he didn't energize the negativity because he could have cried too. He could have told me I was a bad mom, and you know what, I would have taken it because I kind of deserved it. But he didn't. He energized the positive. He looked at the bright side, and he said, no, I'm not going to go there because if I cry, my brother will cry more, and then I'll cry more. And the negative builds, it multiplies. So I'm going to just change this energy right now. And then number 3, he didn't fight his fear. Instead, he embraced it and laughed in its face. So guys, I really want to thank you for having me up here today. It means the world to me, and I want you to just keep these lessons with you. So tell yourself the good stories, energize the positive, and stop fighting your fears. That's it.